from the Heritage Association and from the Historical Society. And I'd like to welcome you to the 11th Annual Tony Woiak Festival.
Okay, this festival is sponsored by two esteemed local organizations, the Washburn Heritage Association and the Washburn Area Historical Society. This season is, need more.
Just keep talking, she'll do it.
This season is funded in part by a grant from Wisconsin Humanities with funds from the National Endowment for the Humanities and the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin Humanities strengthens the roots of community life through educational and cultural programs that inspire civic participation and individual imagination. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this project do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities.
And we want to say thank you to the Harborview Event Center for hosting us again tonight. And thank you to our individual WAHS and WHA organizations who donate their time and their efforts to make these nights happen. And of course, thank you to the audience. Thank you guys for showing up.
Tonight we welcome Sharon Stewart. Many of you know Sharon already, but each of you individually may have become acquainted with Sharon through different associations. Sharon is, of course, a member of the Washburn Heritage Association and has served on its board ever since its beginning. And before that, when a group of concerned citizens pooled time and talents to prevent the demolition of the DuPont Civic Center, now the club. But she has also worked with the Shawnee Bay Arts Council, the League of Women Voters, Washburn Schools Quiz Bowl, and is a Stage North Groundling board member and volunteer. In all of these areas, Sharon has contributed her energy and enthusiasm to get things done.
She gets things done, and I think partly it's because she is sort of a problem solver. And one of the examples of that is when she meets a friend, right after she says good morning, the next thing is, did you do the Wordle today? And she's also she's a crossword puzzle doer, and especially from the Washington Post, a great big one. Sharon is also a lover of history, and especially local stories that help us learn about our heritage. Sharon is also a bit of a performer, as anyone who has ever taken the Brownstone Days trolley tour can tell you. Watching one of Sharon's trolley tours is like watching a juggler or an acrobat. She checks her notes, she engages her trolley tour audience, she checks with the driver, she peeks out the window to see where they are on the tour, and not only that, she's doing this while hanging on with one hand, hanging on to her notes with the other, on the swaying trolley, traveling backward through Washburn.
Okay, so please welcome Sharon Stewart as we take this evening virtual trolley tour of the historic places in Washburn. And listen closely, everybody, because even if you are a local, you're still going to learn something new tonight.
Ready?
Is everybody settled in? You have all your belongings secured? Welcome to Washburn's trolley tour. This is our Brownstone block party. Here's the route we will be following today. We're starting, I can't do that. We're starting at, you're sitting in the trolley right here at the corner across from City Hall, and we'll go up the hill first. Brownstone is a sandstone, I'm supposed to use this. Brownstone is a sandstone that is found around Shawnee Bay, on the south shore around Port Wing, and on several of the Apostle Islands. It was quarried in the 1880s and 90s and shipped by train around the Midwest to build the popular brownstone row houses in Chicago and New York, as well as mansions and important public buildings throughout the Midwest. By the turn of the century, the use of brownstone declined. There was a general business depression, but more importantly, the development of locally produced concrete was cheaper and easier. I have to figure out how to make it work. Okay. Washburn City Hall. The Romanesque Revival brick building in the front was built in 1893 as Washburn's first library. Classic design, central arched openings, a lovely brick frieze. The brick was molded with rounded edges. After the Carnegie Library was built in 1904, this building went through a series of uses until 1937, when, it's very simple, right? When, with a brownstone addition, it became Washburn City Hall. That was in 1937. The brownstone was salvaged from the Northern State Bank that was being demolished just 3 doors down the street. There are 3 properties in Washburn on the National Register of Historic Places. First is the Washburn Library, 1904. The Scottish steel industrialist Andrew Carnegie funded construction of over 2,000 libraries throughout the country. This library, like those in Bayfield and Hayward, is an example of neoclassical revival architecture. With a central stairway to the entrance, the building is intended to be imposing and to revere learning. Ionic columns flank the recessed entry. Dental blocks, those tooth-like blocks beneath the cornice, surround the building. In the late 1900s, the library was renovated to provide handicapped access to both floors. The key point of the application for those money was that first picture with all the steps that you had to go up. Clearly, it was not accessible until the side door was made useful. Last year, the old mortar was removed and brownstone blocks repointed. That was a $183,000 task. This is a virtual tour, so I can share with you our celebrated librarian, Mae Greenwood. Is anybody here in this photo? She was first hired in 1898 at the original library. She helped to move to the new present library and went on to serve for 66 years until age 94. The entry to St. Louis Catholic Church is Romanesque Revival and hints at the grand cathedral that was dreamed of for this site. Construction started in 1902, and for many years it was simply an expansive basement covered by a 27-foot high-pitched roof that sat at the level of the brownstone columns flanking the entry. Once the forests were cleared and the timber workers moved on, the local economy stagnated. All dreams of building a cathedral were foiled by lack of funds. Finally, in 1984, a major renovation raised the roof and resulted in a more finished interior. The adjacent St. Louis School was constructed in the 50s, but closed in 2013 for enrollment and financial reasons. Walker High School was a Romanesque Revival brownstone castle constructed in 1893, just ahead there on the left. But this is a digital tour.
So you get to see this bonus image. Walker School burned and was demolished in 1947. That was 75 years ago, but our school teams are still called the Castle Guards. When the Board of County Commissioners wanted to demolish the Bayfield County Courthouse and build something new, the citizens revolted. As a result, in 1975, this building was the first Bayfield County building to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. This federal designation protects it from demolition forever. Bayfield was the county seat for an earlier LaPointe County and continued that role when a new state map created Bayfield County in 1866. A controversial 1892 election approved moving the seat to Washburn. And just 2 years later, construction started on this building. You can clearly see the original building was square, with 2 stories on a raised basement, with elements of both Romanesque and Renaissance styles. It was built in 2 years, 1894 to 96, for just under $32,000. A grand portico extends from the front of the building, and that roof is supported by 4 columns, topped with elaborate acanthus leaves. Note the balcony behind the portico. Has anybody ever been on that? I'm dying to do it now. A cupola at the top stands on columns and covers an opening in the dome called an oculus, which brings light into the building. The painted dome is also supported by columns. Note the wide and narrow bands of stone and plain smooth surfaces creating pattern on the walls. The large corner blocks provide a visual sense of strength. They are called coins with a Q, an excellent Scrabble word.
Yeah.
We're heading down toward 3rd Avenue now. Here is a craftsman-style home built in 1918 for Mr. Lean, who owned an important men's clothing store. The wide overhanging eaves and deep-set front porch confirm that the architect may have studied under Frank Lloyd Wright. The home across the way was also built in 1918 for the Estabrook furniture store owner, with a hip roof, wide eaves, and a belt course below the 2nd-story windows. It is one of only 2 examples of the prairie style in Washburn. And here we have the A.C. Probert House, built in 1887, with a later 1910 addition. It is the folk Victorian style. A.C. Probert built and started the Bank of Washburn, that is now the Cultural Center. He was president of the Businessmen's Association, the school board, the County Board of School Supervisors, and town chairman. But in 1896, he was convicted of embezzlement of bank funds. It took 3 trials. 1 overturned for jury tampering. A 2nd jury could not reach a verdict, but the 3rd met with success. After serving a 27-month term in state prison, he moved around before settling into banking in Taos, New Mexico. In 1912, that was from 1896 to 1912, so just 16 years later, he was again indicted for embezzlement. Horses were the only mode of transportation, which explains the brownstone hitching post, and the carriage block says 1887, A.C. Probert in the middle. The carriage block was to aid Milady as she was mounting a horse side saddle or climbing into a carriage. With the popular Jackie's Playground on our left, we are now entering Washburn's East 3rd Street Residential Historic District. The E.I. DuPont Company built its plant in Barksdale in 1905 to manufacture explosives for stump removal and for the mining industry in northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. By mid-1917, with the increased demand for TNT for World War I, DuPont employed 4,000 men, a couple women. Washburn became a company town. The preeminent home in the district was built in 1917 for the DuPont superintendent and is colonial revival in style. 2 doors down, in a prairie school style, the other one in town, there's only 2, was the assistant superintendent's house. The buildings in our historic district were almost all built during World War I, and the majority were built and owned by DuPont to house their workers. They were rented to the workers. The increased demand for TNT made housing for workers critical. The district's national significance is enhanced by its development as a DuPont company town. This frantic rate of construction produced a concentration of houses of architectural significance, built in popular styles of the day: Craftsman, Colonial Revival, Queen Anne, Dutch Colonial Revival, Bungalow, as well as housing of no particular style, which is known as vernacular housing. This Dutch Colonial Revival building was built in 1917 to serve as the DuPont Social Club, for men only, of course. After the Civic Center was built, it became a hospital. Now it is apartments. Now I'm going backward. This is not I'm a Mac person.
Sharon, does the bus driver have this problem?
No. He doesn't have any problems, except he doesn't always stop where I want him to. This house was built in 1918 in the arts and crafts style. It was a mail order house. Sears, Roebuck, and others had catalogs of home designs from which to choose. All the materials you would want to make this house. The roofing, the plumbing, the electrical, the appliances arrived by train as a kit with instructions. This house was built by Bert Harrington, an engineer for the Chicago, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Omaha Railroad. This Dutch colonial building was built in 1918 as a club for DuPont workers and their families. It boasted spaces for basketball, bowling, dancing, and community gatherings. After the castle burned in 1947, the club served as the high school for several years. DuPont provided $35,000 to build the new high school on West 4th Street. In 1961, DuPont sold the club to the city, and with a recreation director, it continued to be a hub of activity. Unfortunately, with lack of investment, the building deteriorated. When the city proposed demolition in 2010, citizens objected. The Washburn Heritage Association organized to save the building. Jim and Mary Nowakowski purchased the building and proceeded to stabilize and clear the building for redevelopment. They organize and manages the building. This all-volunteer team desperately needs both your volunteer time and your money as they move forward in putting the building back to its original use as a community center. On the left side of the street, the Washburn Cultural Center is the third Washburn building on the National Register of Historic Places. The Bank of Washburn was built in 1890 by that scoundrel, A.C. Probert. It is in the Romanesque Revival style, with brownstone quarried locally from Houghton Point. Note the large columns around the base, with an imposing lintel that supports the second floor. After the bank closed, it was used for offices and housing until 1994, when, thanks to benefactor Skip Ungroat, the Washburn Cultural Center opened. The building is now an important community resource. It features art exhibits and a gift shop on the first floor, a historical museum on the second, and well-used meeting space on the third. Veterans Park was once the home of the Hotel Washburn. Just a block away from the depot, it was a busy site for businessmen and other visitors. Quick view there. Previous. I'll learn this by the time we're done. Shawamigan Bookstore was actually has two building dates, 1888 and 1895. So it was built as two buildings. Anchors the third corner at this intersection. The brownstone building down the street housed Bayfield County Bank, the first bank in Washburn, and was right across from the hotel, which is where all the business was being done. As we work our way down the street, don't overlook this one-story building. It once had an upper floor that housed a 600-seat. We have 100 seats set up here tonight. This housed a 600-seat theater that showed where you could see plays, go to dances, concerts, and magic shows. As the family-owned Washburn Iron Works approaches 50 years in business, the third generation is now the management, and construction to enlarge the business is underway. We are now entering Memorial Park. During World War I, DuPont employees donated 2 hours' wages per month to the DuPont Patriotic Association to support local war needs. I think about that. Can you imagine all the guys that must have carped about that over coffee breaks? 2 hours a month, that was a lot of money. It was a big commitment. At the end of the war, the balance in the employees fund was used to purchase the land for Memorial Park and for the Veterans Monument, and then they donated the park to the city. Memorial Park, presented by the DuPont Patriotic Association of the Barksdale plant as a memorial to the soldiers and sailors of Washburn. That's my thumb. Memorial, in memory of the brave pioneers of Wisconsin who fought so valiantly for the freedom of our beloved country. On August 28, 1920, DuPont closed at noon for a huge picnic to celebrate the park. There are reports of many early gatherings of 1,500 to 5,000 people arriving by truck, train, boat, and automobile for gatherings at the park. The first Washburn homecoming was held here in 1929. Buildings at the park included a caretaker's summer home, a concession stand, and a kitchen building. A long dock with a diving platform once extended out into the lake. And through the 1950s, young people would come for swimming lessons and spend the day hanging out with their friends. At this point, we're going to get out of the trolley and explore this building, the kitchen building. Watch your step as you get out of the trolley. A City of Washburn historical landmark built 1924, restored 2009. The oldest remaining building in Memorial Park, which was contributed to the community by E.I. DuPont Company employees to honor veterans of the First World War. Many of you volunteered to work on this project. Thank you. There's a number of names here tonight on that list, and some that aren't. This is my very favorite thing about this building, though. It's the tables and chairs built into the walls on the outside. When you go inside, there's a stove and some pictures on the wall. I want to call your attention to this picture that depicts what is now called the coal dock. This is a pre-1900 view of Washburn showing how the rail lines from the prairies met the Great Lakes ships at the dock to deliver and pick up merchandise and raw materials. At the upper left is the city dock with a steam-powered boat ready to pick up passengers. In a few minutes, we will pass by the site where all this industry took place. Washburn was founded in 1883 primarily by railroad men who found this deep water terminus for the Chicago, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Omaha Railroad. Grain elevators stored wheat and flax brought in by rail from the plains to be shipped back east. And coal, household goods, freight, and lumber were brought in to settle the Midwest. Brown stone was shipped east to meet the construction demands of growing cities of Chicago and New York. And then rail service was discontinued in 1977. The entire area was redeveloped to its current uses. Moving on now. Everybody please get back on the trolley. Memorial Park is a busy campground with 50 rental sites. It is used by local residents to hold picnics and gatherings. And over there by the parking lot is a plaque recognizing Tom Blake, a local boy who made it big on the West Coast, developing the sport of surfboarding. Moving on down Pump House Road, this was the pump house for the Washburn Waterworks. Just as in Chicago, an animal kicking over a lantern in a shed started a fire that wiped out a block of downtown stores and offices in 1888. Washburn built this brownstone pump house 1 year later to get water from the lake. We were the first city in the area to have water pumped to all homes. This building is now privately owned, and the owners gussied it up quite nicely. This home was built in 1970 on the grounds of what had been DuPont-built Little League fields and an 8-hole golf course. As we travel down Pump House Road, I want to point out that the primary train depot was located on Omaha Street, just up there. As many as 4 trains a day passed through the station, bringing businessmen, workers, visitors, and goods. Aha. Locals call this the coal dock. I have a sentence here with a blank. I emailed the city and didn't get a response. It extends blank feet out into the bay. I think it's 550, but I never got an answer back. It's a long way. The picture you saw back at Memorial Park was of this area at the turn of the 19th century. After rail service was discontinued in the late 70s, the city developed a very successful city-owned marina in 1981. This marina has the largest lift in the region, so the Bayfield ferry boats and tour boats winter here along the shore while the lake ices up. This summer, you can sit on the deck at Stage North and have a very affordable cocktail. Planning is underway for a complete 22-23 production season. Plan now for your costume for the Disco Ball fundraiser on August 20th. This is where we are right now at the event center with the marina nearby. And now we're traveling along Holman Lakeview Drive. This gravel road is very bouncy, so hang on. Along the shore down here, you can see remnants of the city dock from the 1880s. Several passenger steamships made multiple daily runs to and from Ashland, Bayfield, and La Pointe. Townspeople would gather here to watch the arrival of the Mary Scott, coming in from Ashland at 4 in the afternoon to see who was coming to town. We are now entering Thompson's West End Park. This city-owned campground has 50 sites. 17 are available to be leased by the season. Artesian wells deliver fresh water through a 1-inch pipe at 54 gallons per minute. Once you taste it, you will understand why so many people come here to fill multiple containers to use this water in their homes. The wells were dug to provide clean water to the steam engines that powered the saws in the lumber mills at this site. You might wonder why they didn't use lake water. Well, they did, and then it started getting all gummed up with all the sawdust, so they found artesian wells. This park is a public gathering place for picnics, swimming, paddleboarding, and launching boats for fishing. In the winter, snowmobiles use this lake access for ice fishing. We're going to exit the trolley here now, too, to take a short walk down the lake walk. Unfortunately, someone decided they wanted to use this banner as a souvenir. It is now missing in action. The lake walk is an old trail that links important historic shoreline sites. The lumber mills at West End Park, the city dock, the merchandise dock, or the coal dock. Washburn Shoreline is part of the Wisconsin Maritime Trail System, and interpretive signs on the walking trail tell our history. Bud Robinson said it well: treasure and cherish our pathway by the lake. Be gentle to it, for it is probably more fragile than we. You can learn to identify native plants and pollinators in this garden along the walkway. But this sign is our destination today. From 1880 until 1924, this part of the lake was the site of 3 thriving lumber mills, providing year-round employment for several hundred men. C.C. Thompson, South Shore, and the largest, A.A. Bigelow. This picture helps you to see that the lumber mills were out in the water, not on the shore. The lake bottom here is still mushy from all the sawdust. After the turn of the century, northern Wisconsin was timbered out and the sawmills closed. The term that describes how the landscape appeared at that time is the cutover. Let's head back to the trolley now. To summarize, as we travel to the end of the tour, Washburn grew from a timber work camp to a quickly growing seaport community. The population first peaked at nearly 5,500 in 1896. But just 4 years later, by 1900, timber resources were dwindling and the brownstone market eroded. because of the development of concrete. Oops. The second, Ellen says it's very easy. That's what I wanted. The second peak population was 1,000 more, 6,500 in 1918 during World War I, when DuPont employed 4,000 men for TNT production, and other companies were making shipping boxes and crates. But this boom crashed with a bang. Never mind. Crashed with a bang when the armistice was signed on November 11th, 1918. In 1920, the population was only 3,700, and only 175 men were employed at DuPont. It had been 4,000 down to 175. Although TNT was used throughout World War II, it never brought back the earlier number of workers. By 1970, Washburn's population was just under 2,000 at 1957. And the DuPont plant closed its doors the following years in 1971. 2 years ago, in 2020, the official population was 1,844, 113 fewer than in 1970. Thank you for coming on this ride with me tonight. Kay and Ron Masson sponsor our trolley ride. And I'm going to let you out here so you can go across the street and see the Washburn Heritage Kiosk at Wickdall Park. Now check to make sure you have all your belongings and be careful as you get off the trolley. Thank you. Any stories anybody thought of as they were going along? Okay, yes, Mary. It's, yeah, I can. It, I can describe it better. Go out from, well, go to the hotel, and then go toward Bayfield a half a block. Go down that street and turn left. It's in the middle of the block between 1st and 2nd of Omaha. Right? So behind, kind of behind the ironworks, a little over. Yes. There was another depot I just learned about from David Bradley at the bottom of Washington Avenue.
Right, yeah.
And that was
That was the Battle Axe depot, and they had the Battle Axe.
the Battle Axe. Was that an Omaha Railroad or is it private?
Bayfield County.
It was called, yeah, Omaha and whatever.
Was it the Omaha Railroad?
No.
It wasn't part of the Omaha.
But we just called it a Battle Yeah.
Okay.
And it ran from Iron River to Washburn and then to Bayfield. Yeah.
And it was used, DuPont workers used it too.
DuPont workers used it, and passengers would use it. They'd pick it up. They would just stop and pick up people.
I just wanted to highlight that what we're doing tonight is a collaboration between the Heritage Association and the History Society. And it's an example of how the two groups work so well together. And not only in an event like this, but David Bradley has been invaluable in a lot of the panels that are going into this kiosk. The panel committee that puts this together is going to be doing a presentation 2 weeks from tonight. And I think it'll be really, can I ask people to raise?
Thank you. Be still my heart.
Yeah.
Next, in 2 weeks, you're going to hear how much work it takes to put a panel together. And it is, Susan Magrath at the museum has been invaluable.
Absolutely.
And we've called in other people as we've worked on panels with their expertise, Gary Oldwood and others.
Because history matters, right? History matters.
Yes, it does matter. Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. Nice to have you all come out on a rainy night.